Welcome to another episode of Unapologetically Strong on WOVU 95.9 FM. Today is a very, very special episode on just strictly for Black men. And today we're going to talk about a very tough subject called suicide. So many as you know, I am a mental health provider as well as a husband, a father, a son, and everything else that comes along with that. And so one of my passions have always been the Black male, right? Because I've spoken about how I have gone through depression, even prior to actually knowing what I was going through. I went through a level of depression. And I have to admit, when I went through that level of depression, I did not consider suicide. I did not consider leaving this earth. I did not consider not being around. Now, it could be possibly because that was my first time I had my first son. So this is in the mid to late 90s. And I was at the University of Akron and I just wasn't myself. So I have to admit, I did not go through the process of fighting these struggles or these cognitive messages that states that I'm not enough, that I'm not, enough, and I need not to be here. So I didn't go through this. But I did, and we'll talk later on, I did have a friend that goes through this, and I do come in contact with clients, and I did have a friend that actually successfully, and that's what they call it, successfully completed the suicide process. So before we get into that, what I want to do is just, first of all, give out some trigger warnings. This is an episode that talks about death, that talks about suicide, and if at any moment you feel as if you need some time, trust me, take that time, take that step back. I also want to give a couple of numbers. So the suicide prevention hotline is 988. Also, I am the co-owner, because my wife owns with me, of Mental and Emotional Wellness Centers of Ohio. If you ever need to speak to a mental health provider and you would like to come to us or come to me, you can always call 216-282-3733 and select option number 1. And even during this call, if there's some things that come up and you want to text me, during this call directly to my, work line, you can text me at 216-243-9636. And that goes directly to me. And so let's start it off. So who is this topic for? This topic is for anyone who is a Black male, who cares for a Black male, love a Black male, or come in contact with Black men. And so there are some myths about Black men and mental health and strength that we'll jump into. So if you work with a Black male, I appreciate you listening. If you are a Black male and you're taking the time to listen to, me ramble a little bit about this profession that I love, as well as the individuals that I love, thank you. So before we jump into any articles or anything like that, let me tell you how this came about. So over the past month, so I write two newsletters. So I write a newsletter called Passion of Practicing, which helps provide some nuggets on mental health providers creating their own private practice. So that is a weekly, that is going to a monthly, and you can get it on LinkedIn. And then I also write an article called Brother to Brother, a newsletter called Brother to Brother, and it sends and offers out into the community articles that are expressly directed towards Black men. And so for a while, over the past couple months, I think about a month and a half, I have been struggling with writing a article for suicide for Black men, directly to Black men. And every time I would sit down to actually write the article, it would take me a minute. And if anyone knows me, I I love to talk. I talk frequently, and quite often I talk as I write. So there are times when I'm talking to someone and I have my notes open and I'm writing and I'm writing in my notes from my phone. And for this particular article, it took a lot out of me. And so I wrote it over and over and over again because I needed, excuse me for a minute. I needed to ensure that the message that I had conveyed what I felt. So I took a minute, took a step back, and I just decided not to actually write the article. And so what I actually decided to do, because I do have a program, I decided to dedicate a complete program to the subject of suicide in the Black community, as well as for Black men. So give me a minute, because as you probably could imagine, because I am a Black male, this is something that hits hard and something that has actually increased over, the past couple years. So if you bring up anything from the CDC and you type in suicide in the Black community, what you'll find is a 37% of increase of suicide within the Black community. That is between ages of 10 to 24 years old. That is the highest rate of any demographic of race. And that is from 2018 to 2020. And what we're finding with children ages 5 to 12, Black children are thinking and successfully committing suicide at a higher rate than their counterparts. And so when we look specifically at Black adults and we look at what happened to us, and we're not just simply talking about what happened to us as it relates to, slavery, things that happened in the 60s. We're looking at what happened to us and what we went through in 2020. And I'm not sure if anyone, had the opportunity to just look and think about what happened to America or the world during that time. And just like anything else in the world, especially in America, when America catches the cold, we catch the flu, right? We catch cancer. And so we saw a vast increase in completed suicides of individuals between the ages of 10 and 65 in America during and after the pandemic. And some of the things that we looked at when individuals did a survey, and the survey was collected of individuals or Black and brown individuals between the ages of 18 and 30. And what we found is that individuals during that time decided that life was hopeless. And this concept of hope and this concept of dignity, which we'll talk about a little later on, is something that fueled these individuals' thought process on completing suicide. And it wasn't just simply being trapped in a house and not being able to go get toiletries. It was literally being trapped in a house with individuals that were violent. We saw an increase in domestic violence in children during that time. Now, what does that mean? That doesn't necessarily mean that the domestic violence was not there. We just simply, that respite that children and individuals had, prior to the pandemic was no longer there. We lost that, and we lost that concept of separateness. And so we saw, at least for children, we saw an increase in domestic violence. We also saw an increase in domestic violence as it relates to partnerships. And this is across the board. This is male-female, this is male-male, female-female, transgender. We saw an increase in domestic violence. And so afterwards, and we are simply, 4 years removed from the pandemic, and we're less than a year removed from just having everything open, we're still finding that individuals have that hopelessness, and they're just simply tired, and they're dragged down by what has happened to us. And when we look at Black and brown individuals, and we look at Black people just overall, we're feeling that weight of killing of Black males by the police. We're feeling the weight of cancellation in the workplace, of diversity and inclusion. We're feeling the weight of microaggressions. We're feeling the weight of our families. We're feeling the weight of economic trauma, or economic hardships, and so we're feeling less hopeful of our life and our future. And so today, when we're looking at suicide, and today specifically, I will be, focusing primarily on males, on Black males. This epidemic or this issue with suicide is across the board. As I said earlier, from 5 years old all the way up to 65, we have seen a vast increase or a significant increase in the amount of successful suicides. And this morning when I was getting my son ready, so in the morning I get up, I take my son to school. And this morning in particular, I said, hey, Dad is going to talk about suicide. And, he looked at me, he said, how do you feel about that? And I said, well, it's kind of difficult. And I said, well, what about you? What do you think? How do you know when someone, is possibly thinking about suicide? My son is 15. He attends Benedictine. Shout out to Benedictine High School. And he said, well, Dad, it looks like when someone is down and then they're happy, right? And then you go to ask them why they're happy. And what they say is, things are done, right? Things are complete. And I asked him, I said, have you thought about that? And he said, no, Dad, I haven't. I said, do you know anyone that has, talked about that? And he said, there's a couple kids at school that, has gone through that. And in my school, in previous schools, he said he did have one that was successfully, completed. And I asked him, I said, well, how did you feel about that? He said, it really hit me. And I said, all right. And so what we talked about was the ability to communicate your feelings and your emotions as a Black male and not hold them in. And so today, that's what we're going to do. We're going to actually talk about what it looks like to allow yourself to open up and have those moments, whether it is with your partner, whether it is with your friends, whether it is with your crew. And if you are an individual who is looking for a crew or looking for community, we have churches. One of my church is Mount Zion of Oakwood. They do a lot of men's work, and you can reach them at 440-232-2645. I'll be doing a breakfast with the Eastview United Church of Christ, and their number is 216-921-7673. Everybody in the Divine Nine, so all of us in the Divine Nine, I am a proud member of Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated. We all have a mental health segment. And so you can reach anyone in the Divine Nine if you're looking for assistance. Also, using Psychology Today, you bring up, you open up psychologytoday.org and you can go through and find absolutely any type of mental health provider you need. And so today, like I said, we're gonna jump and delve a little bit into it. I appreciate everyone who stuck with me during this first segment. Today is dedicated to Black men. If you love a Black man, if you're raising a Black male, you're in a partnership with a Black male, you work with a Black male, any of these individuals, this show is dedicated to them. So I'm gonna take a quick break. This is Unapologetically Strong on WOVU 95.9 FM.
It's okay. To have to experience this and not be able to have the time to just sit with Ian's choice, which I respect and understand, that he didn't want to be here anymore. And that's a hard thing for other people to...
Welcome back. And that was Sound Courtesy. That was Regina King talking about her son. Sound courtesy of Good Morning America. Now, if some of you guys may not know, or you may or may not know, Regina King lost her son to suicide. His name was Ian Alexander Jr. He was born January 19th, 1996, and he died January 21st, 2022. So that means that he was 26 years old. And for anyone that has followed Regina King's career, you know that she took her son everywhere. When she went to a show, she took her son. When they were out, they had a special relationship because the relationship that they had was of a mother and a son, which is one of the most, significant and special relationships to exist. And so that clip, spoke about how she needed to deal with and understand that her son just simply didn't want to be here anymore. And this is sometimes how individuals feel. There are times when the individuals just simply don't want to go through this or don't want to be here anymore. And for her to verbalize it in that way and to deal with it, right? This is her only son. This is her only child. To deal with it in this way is a very powerful way. And she's a public figure. And that was one of her first talks. Welcome back. I am your host, Eric King. This is Unapologetically Strong on WOVU 95.9 FM. Today, we are just strictly dedicating all of this and who we are today to Black males. And we're looking at the subject of suicide. And we have, as I said in my first segment, we have seen an increase in Black male suicide, and we are seeing an increase in suicide in the Black community. Once again, the suicide prevention line is 988. If you feel the need to reach out to us and look for a counselor, we're one of the few organizations that have primarily Black counselors. We have, including myself, we have 3 Black male counselors, and we also should be adding 1 more Black male counselor, as well as another Black woman counselor. If you need to reach us, you can reach us at 216-282-3733 and select option 1 for our intake line. So as I said, this concept or this idea of suicide has, come around. Once again, we just recently heard of Regina King. I have my nephew. He was he had a friend, and that friend successfully committed suicide. And my nephew is 11 years old, and so he's dealing with that. And so I, as an individual, dealt with suicide while in college with an individual from college. So let me just take a step back. So in school, there was this bright, effervescent personality by the name of Rick Coble. And Rick Coble, if anybody knows Rick Coble, he was an amazing energy, right? So prior to him actually, or us dealing with this concept of vibe, right? He had a vibe. He had an energy. He was effervescent, right? And anyone that came in contact with Rick would automatically get his energy because it was effective. It was transcendent. And so Rick, as we do, he played football for the University of Akron. Shout out to the Zips. He played football for University of Akron. And at that time in the 90s, we had a lot of Sigmas on the yard that were football players. And so he followed behind one of my closest friends' steps, Pat Powell, and he wanted to be a Sigma. And so he successfully completed the transition to becoming a Sigma, right? And he was by himself, and he went through the process by himself. And this brother, when I say that we used to call him the Sigma statue, right? So he would come out on stage when we would step, and he had good rhythm, but that's not why we wanted him on stage. He would come in, so we had this step called the African step, right? And so we would get we would go through the motions. And so he would come out, he would have his loincloth on, and one of, his girlfriend at the time or someone would oil him down, and he would literally come on the stage and just stand with the staff, and the crowd would go crazy. And so we called him the Sigma statue. Right. So I'm going to get through one of these segments. Without getting choked up. So, but he became the Sigma statue, right? And so everywhere he went, everyone knew Coble, right? Everyone knew Rick Coble, became the Sigma statue. And so as time went on, he got married. He got married to someone he loved. He got married to a Zeta. He had a son, right? But there was something that was going on the inside of Rick that, because of how effervescent he was, we didn't necessarily pay attention to. We didn't see and we didn't connect to. And we really saw a very significant change in my brother when he had an accident. And so when he had that accident, it broke his body, right? Because it was serious and it was significant. He had facial, struggles. He had mobility struggles. And so that Sigma statue, right? If anybody knew Rick and remember Rick, that Sigma statue where he would stand and he was boom, pow, ping, right? His body was pristine. He was breaking up on the inside. And so time went on and he began to continue to break on the inside. And what we found is that he was using more alcohol to get through the days. Now, mind you, this brother graduated. He was also in the mental health field. He was using more alcohol to allow himself to feel better, to get through, right? At this time, he had a wife, he had a son. And he also, that thing that happens to us when we leave a sanctuary of freedom, which we call college, began to get to him. And we had a group, at this time we had a group of Sigmas that we would talk to every day. And one day, one of the members in this group got married, was getting married. And so all of us went to Vegas, right? And so Rick went to Vegas. But Rick that we knew from Akron didn't go to Vegas. It was a different Rick. He didn't have, he was a different guy. We noticed he was drinking. He was more sloppy. And all of us was saying like, what should we do? What should we do? And all of us was saying the exact same thing at the time, because this is what we were taught. Oh, he'll be okay. Oh, he'll be all right. And so and he began to over time deteriorate. And we kept saying, right? We're talking about lawyers. We're talking about PhDs. We're talking about fitness, gurus. At the time, I was working in the industry, wasn't quite a counselor yet, but I was in the industry, right? I recognized what it looked like for an individual to go downhill. But I also acquiesced and was like, okay. And I kept it quiet. And when I knew something was wrong with Rick, and when I saw that it was time for us to stop being quiet, was one day I was sitting in my basement in Maple. And at the time, that's where I lived. And Rick, who at the time lived in Charlotte, North Carolina, showed up at my door midday in Maple. And and I went outside and I said, Rick, what are you doing here? And what he said was, I just decided to jump in the car and just go. And that's where my concern. I called everybody. I said, Rick is here. Rick is here. Everyone said the exact same thing. Why is Rick here? Why is Rick in Ohio? Right? Now, mind you, he went to the University of Akron. So he had roots in Ohio. But no one could understand why Rick was here. And that was the moment that I knew that it was time to actually do something with Rick. And unfortunately, when we decided, it was me and a couple other brothers that was inside of this group decided to speak up. We got the traditional, pushback. We got the pushback that, oh, you guys just being soft. Everything is okay. And the day that I got the phone call that Rick successfully committed suicide, I was at work. At the time, I was at Belfair and I was a manager at Belfair. And I just broke down. Everything stopped. because the energy that was Rick was extinguished. And so called everybody, figured out what was going on, called his wife, called everybody, and everybody was devastated. Went to his funeral, came back, and this is when me and the guy that my frat bro, Justice, and you may have been on the radio with me. We used to do Unapologetically Black. This is where we began to hit hard, and this is to this day. This friend group has not been the same in that way. And so from that point on, I knew that in some way, shape, or form, I needed to do better. I needed to have the hard conversations and be there. Now, let me just be candid. If any of my brothers are listening, if any of the former group is listening, no one is to blame for Rick's condition. No one is to blame for Rick committing suicide. And that is not what I'm saying. Rick is only responsible for what happened to Rick. What I'm saying is, or where I'm adding is, there's this point or this stigma of Black male strength that we have to get rid of. First and foremost, there are no such thing as good and bad emotions. Now, growing up, I was taught that the only emotion that is acceptable in the community, as well as a Black male, is either apathy or no emotion, right? Neutral, or anger. And so we need to begin to allow the stigma of emotions, or what emotions mean and how they are and how we as Black males deal with them. We have to let that go. And so first and foremost, we have to break the myth that there's no such thing as good and bad emotions. They are comfortable and uncomfortable emotions. Secondly, Black men have the right to have a full, wide range of emotions. And so we have to allow Black men to have all of the emotions that we all have, or that non-Black males can have. And so we're going to take a quick break. On the other side, we're going to start off with this myth, and we're going to break this myth. And so before we jump on this break, once again, if anyone is feeling triggered, if anyone needs a moment to talk, dial 988. Or you can text me directly at 216-243-9636, and that'll go directly to my line, and I'll be checking that mid-break. And if you're looking for anyone to talk to, and you may not want to come to us, reach out to psychologytoday.org and begin to do the search and do the work. This is Unapologetically Strong on WOVU 95.9 FM.
Grief is a journey. I understand that grief is love that has no place to go, because he is always with me, and the joy and happiness that he gave all of us.
Welcome back. WOVU 95.9 FM. This is Unapologetically Strong. And if anyone has listened to this, I guess, station or listened to this program, you know that I ask my guests, when I do have a guest, I ask the guests, where do they find their strength? And that was, once again, audio courtesy Regina King on the Good Morning America show. And when I heard her say that, when I heard her talk about her grief and talk about love and talk about what it is, all I heard was strength. And a lot of times when my guest answers the question of where they find their strength, they go back to their God or, their family, things of that nature. And when we have that family that, that really lifts us up, because let me just be real with you, there are family members that are definitely not out there to lift you up. And there's quite a few family members that, are there to actually, keep you where you are or bring you down to their level. But when you have an individual or family that loves you and cares for you, that will take you in many, in some amazing directions. And I just want to say, thank you for my family. My wife, Joy, mother-in-law, mother, dad, Grandma Ellen, I know you out there, miss, listening. Mother-in-law, B, I know you out there. And also my extended family. When you have family and they recognize grief or they recognize love, and when someone struggles with depression or struggles with suicide or not being around, there are times when your family is a help, and then there's a time when your family is a hindrance. And I just want to say thank you for the family that I have, as well as my extended family that's given me shout outs online. So I appreciate that. Thank you guys. So let's jump back into it. Once again, this is Unapologetically Strong. Today, this is dedicated to Black men. And the suicide prevention hotline is 988. And I gave out my number. I'll give it out again. But last segment, I ended on this concept or this myth of Black men. So let's jump right into it. I am a believer of Christ. I am an individual that believes that Jesus is my Savior. And although, if anyone knows me, I'm the type of person that will read have read every and anything about religion and theology, to where there are times where I'm debating a Christian about how they should treat a Taoist, how they should treat a Muslim, how they should treat a Catholic. So a lot of times I'm debating on, my fellow brethren on how they should be treating. And what I found in my study of religion, what I found is if you pay attention and you study, the books of many of these religions, you'll find there's a common thread in there. The common thread is that there's only one God, right? The common thread is also God is within you. So I'm a true believer that God is within me. With that said, we are a triune being. We are of mind, body, and spirit. And so what does that mean as it relates to Black men? Black men are strong. We have endured some amazing hardships. So our bodies are strong, right? So we are ancestors of enslaved people that made it. And so if anything, you can say that Black men are strong in body. We're also strong in mind. I mean, when you think about the separation of power or the division of power, we're second to last. And yes, Black women are last. And I'm not, casting that off. We're second to last. With that said, we're first in the murder rate. We're first in every other category of demographics, right? We have microaggressions that we have to deal with. If you are too tall, if you're too big, we got to be gregarious, right? We got to laugh. We got to be happy. If you're dark skinned, you have to be passive. If you're light skinned, you got to overcompensate in both areas. So we are mentally strong, and we have been strong as we have gone through this process of life. Now, let's talk about our spiritual strength. What I found in my history in working with Black men, this is where the door to suicide opens up. This is where I have found that the Black men that I've worked with and the Black families or the families that have had individuals successfully complete, this is where, things go downhill. When the spirit has been impugned, shattered, that's where we lose ourselves. And so I spoke about Rick earlier, and what I'm saying what I saw a different Rick when we were in Las Vegas. I saw his spirit. His spirit was gone. And so when I'm talking about spirit, what specifically am I talking about? I'm talking about a Black man's dignity. When we hear that a Black man is tired, a lot of times those that love that Black male think about physical tired, right? So sit down, do this, or don't do that. We sometimes think about mentally tired, but we very rarely think about the spiritual malehood of tiredness. In other words, when I hear a man talk about how tired he is, my first thought is not about he needs to sit down, he needs to go to a spa day, he needs to disconnect from work. What I recognize is that his dignity has been, damaged or shattered. And so when I speak to that man, what I began to talk from is, let me ask you something. Let me ask you this question. When you look in the mirror, do you see the self that you used to be? And in most cases, for men that are on that verge, right, because they are supporting their family, they're going to work, they're enduring, certain indignities and certain struggles, right? They're, quite often they're enduring it at home along with enduring it in the streets. And they say, I'm tired. And they say, my partner is not listening to me. And they say, my partner doesn't hear me. Or when I say something, my partner interjects and I'm just tired. What we find is that man is no longer seeing them, is no longer seeing the true self. And so what they're now seeing is a brand new version, or not a brand new, a different version of themselves. They no longer see that individual who can endure and understand that, yes, I get that this is unfair. I get that the world has, I didn't ask to be this color or be this race. I get that, but now I'm just done with it because I can't find respite. I can't find solace. And so when I'm working with that Black man, I'm asking him, when was the last time you thought of you first? When was the last time that you allowed yourself to just be just open and honest? And what I find is they go to the barbershop and they can only talk about so much at the barbershop, or they can only talk about so much, with their family. And so what is happening is they're not being poured into. They are literally pouring into other people, but they're not being poured into. I think one of the most absurd Instagram posts that I'm seeing is that you see two individuals, right? You see a male, and it's usually a male, but I've also see it with Black males. You see a male, and he has 99%, right? And so what the Instagram post is saying is that person, it has 99 problems, right? And so what happens is their partner, who's usually a woman, comes over and puts their shoulder on this man. And what the Instagram post shows, and this is just a few that I've seen, it shows that his partner's problem going over to the male. I've yet to see a time where in that Instagram post or TikTok or whatever, to where it goes in reverse or we're splitting. And so this myth that Black men can handle anything, this myth that Black men can do, every and anything, is something that has been ingrained in us since the time that we, have been on this earth. So for those that care for Black men, what am I looking for? When I have a Black male that I love and I recognize that, yes, he's going and working out. Yes, he's mentally there with me and engaging. But every now and again, I see him sitting in the corner, by himself, right? I notice that his body language, I recognize that his energy is off. He's sitting in his car, longer and longer. He's not eating right? What do I do? Right? What else am I, to look for? So the first thing that I want to do is, what does it look like for depression overall? So for depression overall, you're looking for depressed moods. You're looking for loss of interest in things. You're looking for poor sleep, agitation, sometimes concentration issues. So that's what depression looks like, overall. Now, what does it look like for Black men? In most cases, it's those same things. And when you ask a Black man to do something, or you ask that man or your partner to do something, he look at you and he takes a bit and he breathes, he goes, he says, I got you. That's when it's time to say, okay, well, maybe I need to handle this. Maybe, okay, let me ask you something. What is it that I can get for you? Okay, what is it that I can do for you? Now, this is not a panacea. And I guarantee that there are individuals listening right now that have a vastly different approach And I appreciate that approach. And if you could, you can text me at 216-243-9636 and give me your approach. But in my history, or when I have, as long as I've been working with this population, and my specialty is Black males, when their spirit is broken, when their spirit is crushed, when they feel like there's no more dignity, that's where things go downhill. And on the other side, we're going to talk about an active approach to suicide and a passive approach to suicide. This is Unapologetically Strong on WOVU 95.9 FM. See you on the other side of the break.
I think the things you go through make you who you are. Mm-hmm. And in my journey, like, there's certain things that I'm not really, I don't even let it into my system like that. I think depression is a luxury.
Wow.
Because where I'm from, you can't afford to be depressed. You got to pay the bill, right?
Right.
So you got to go to work. You got to get up. You got to go do what you got to do. You got people right now.
Welcome back. Unapologetically Strong on WOVU 95.9 FM. This is a special just strictly for my Black men. And so that was my man 50 Cent talking about how depression is a luxury. And so when I first heard that audio, and he said that, it was one of them, it sounded, to be perfectly candid, it sounded like one of them hot takes. It sounded, forced. It also sounded as if it was something that, that was out of touch. But once I allowed myself to absorb what he was saying, allowed myself to, to put down some of my, feelings, when I hear someone talk like that, I was able to, understand exactly what he's feeling. I mean, what he's saying. And in many cases, he is correct. For, Black and brown, individuals, especially men, depression is a luxury. On the other side, of the break, I talked about the symptoms of depression, and depression is a luxury. No one cares at times whether or not you feel bad. No one cares at times whether or not you need a break. The bill, you still got to pay the bills. You still got to go out. You still got to throw the ball with your child. You still got to do everything needed of you. Now, once again, I'm not saying that this is not a responsibility that you sign up for, right? I signed up to be a father at the age of 25. I signed up to be married. I signed up to have 2 more kids. I signed up for my job. I signed up for all of this. And with that said, simply because I signed up for it, that doesn't mean that periodically I need a break. And so we have to let go of this concept that mental health or struggling with mental health is a luxury. We have to let go of this concept that men are not allowed to be, to emote, to show emotions, to open up, right? And in most cases, the reason why men are not opening up is because you're not listening. And it's not just males or Black males that are listening. These are your own crew. As I said, as I spoke about Rick, right? My crew were all men. We were all a part of the same fraternity, all a part of the same, age range. And we did not listen. And it was an active choice not to listen. And so as we move forward, if nothing else, right, in this last little 8 minutes that I have left, if you're listening, if you're not listening, if you just tuning on, and for those that stuck with me, through the times of talking about all of this, thank you. With that said, and I keep saying that, and my wife told me to stop saying that, but I'm going to say it again. With that said, what I'm simply asking of you is just to consider our emotions, all of them. Not just the ones you want from us, not just the ones that make you feel comfortable, but all of them. And just understand that we are, people too as well. So what I want to do is just go back. If you are an individual listening and are in need of help, my church you can reach out to is Mount Zion of Oakwood. You can call them at 440-232-2645. I have an event coming up at East View United Church of Christ at 21, and you can reach them at 216-921-7673. This event is a men's mental health conversation, and that's Saturday, May 18th from 10 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. At 17300 Van Aken Boulevard, Shaker Heights, Ohio. This event is free, and we are attempting to get at least 100, Black men, right? We looking, to get 100 Black men, and this is, and I think they're also doing this in partnership with the, 100 Black men. So if you're looking, to connect, please, connect and reach out. Also, today you only heard, one commercial, and I did that on purpose because I wanted to, just express, the minority men's, mental health fair. It's open to all men, right? And, come out and be a part of the movement to help support and, grow Black men. And so before, I'm going to give a couple, some more shameless plugs. So I do have a virtual men's group. It's a 6-session weekly series, June 2nd through July 7th, starting at 6 and through to 7:30, and this is virtual. The topics, just a few topics, are navigating malehood, masculinity, and emotional intelligence. Now, it is a cost. The cost is for the entire group. It is $495 for all 6 sessions. Per session, it's $100. If you're listening and you take down this code, which is WOVU, you get a 50% discount or 50% off of the purchases. If you want to, you can either go to Mental and Emotional Wellness Centers of Ohio on Eventbrite, or you can email minoritymen@mewcohio.com. And once you email, you'll get a auto reply, and that auto reply will provide you with links. You can either go to Eventbrite and look for virtual men's group, or you can go to Mental and Emotional Wellness Center, or you can email minoritymen@mewcohio.com. And then next, we also have coming in October, we have Thriving to Surviving. It's a 3-part bi-weekly series. It's starting on October 3rd. This is a free event and is also virtual. And so the topics are coping, depression, and masculinity, relationships, self-care, and anger. And then the third session is discrimination, resources, and communication. So if you've listened to us in the past, you know that, this segment is where we're giving out resources, where we're asking you to reach out. Once again, you can go to psychologytoday.org, and they do an excellent job of curating all types of mental health providers, whether in the state of Ohio, actually through United States. So you can go there if you're looking for a, male, if you're looking for a woman, no matter who you're looking for, Spanish speaking, English speaking, whatever, you can find it there. You can also, like I said, I'm a proud member, Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated. You can reach out to either me, and I will put you in contact with anyone in the Divine Nine. So I'm calling out everybody. So I'm calling out the AKAs, the Alphas, the Deltas, the Kappas, Omegas, Iotas, Zetas, Sigmas. Who am I missing? I think I get everybody. I'm calling you all out. To put forth initiatives to help break the stigma of mental health within our community. I truly believe that if we allow, the stigma to persist, we're going to lose continue to lose some amazing people. And although this is, directed towards Black men, I'm really talking about everyone. I'm talking about individuals who are, listening or watch, the YouTube channel. This is for everyone. Everyone needs, have the right to be heard, and everyone have the right to have someone listen to them and specifically for them. And if you have a counselor that is not all that great, get another one. So last thing, if we're going to do this thing properly, we have to start pushing Black men into the mental health fields. So what I want to see is an increase in Black males. So thank you guys, increase in Black males in the field. Thank you guys for being with me. Thank you for being a part of this movement. This is Unapologetically Strong on WOVU 95.9 FM. Peace.